Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV WORLD. In today's show, we will be talking about the very tragic and unprecedented situation that Pakistan is currently facing with regards to the floods and rain that we have seen in the past 2 months, and of course an increase of that just today as well. There have been so many people who have lost their lives. We have the death toll going above 900. We've also had millions of people displaced. They are still sitting without shelter. We also have thousands of homes that have been destroyed, including many videos that have also been circulated today regarding hotels and other houses as well. And this is of course really tragic. Besides that, we've also seen people really suffering, and it's saddening to see the videos of families suffering and talking about the loved ones that they have lost, they couldn't find. We've seen other tragic, horrifying videos of people losing their lives to the devastating floods that have caused much havoc within the country. But unfortunately, of course, in the past we did not see much importance being given to this crisis as it needed to be, and now that we have been seeing much more suffering, we have at least been able to focus on this particular crisis that needed our attention many days ago. However, of course, rescue and relief efforts have been going on, they have been underway. They have also been hampered because of the terrain, because of the floods, and of course the communications as well, something that was affected earlier today, specifically in Balochistan, but has been restored at the moment according to reports. We also realize, of course, that there are people across Balochistan and in KP as well, where they are currently also suffering and they are in need. We've seen the political leadership also go to these areas, get a view of what is going on, and of course calling out to other partners, other political parties, and especially also the international partners to be able to help and give their support to the country and the people that need it. Of course, the Prime Minister also visited Sakka earlier today. He also got an aerial view of the entire devastation and floods, and he has briefed the international partners in a meet today and talked about how this needs to be something that we need international support with. And of course, something that Pakistan is already dealing with is the economic pressures, and now currently we also see that the damages occurred to the agricultural outputs and others are going to be having long-term impacts on the economy as well. We already have estimates of rupees 72 billion that Pakistan requires in terms of relief and rescue efforts. And we also know that at the same time, when we talk about all of these issues, there is a lot of political uncertainty in the country as well, and somehow the focus also shifts to that. But we're glad to see that people are getting together to be able to help the victims of these floods, and we hope to see more change soon. We're going to be talking about an assessment of the damages that has happened so far, what is going to be the extent of these damages in the future as well. Of course, we've seen that the forecasts are having no mercy, and there seems to be more and more rain and a potential more and more devastation as well, and so we hope we can do something about that. We're also going to be talking about what sort of agencies and institutions and resources need to be mobilized that still haven't, what measures need to be taken both at the federal and the provincial levels, and how there needs to be increased coordination and who all can contribute to this, especially in terms of our international partners as well. We know that the EU has announced 1.8 million euros in aid in Pakistan, and we hope to see more announcements coming in as well. For this and more, of course, I've been joined in the studios by Farrukh Pitafi, who's a senior analyst as always. We've also been joined by Dr. Ijaz Ahmed, who's a senior program fellow, Institute of Urbanism. Thank you very much, Dr. Ijaz, for joining us in the studios. We've also been joined online by Mohammed Yunus Mingle, in charge of PEOC PTMA Balochistan. We'll also be joined by Ahmed Kamal, Chairman, Federal Flood Commission, and Ali Asghar Arbab, the journalist who keep updating us regarding the situation, of course, trying to get a better idea. Dr. Ijaz, let me start with you. When we talk about, of course, what has currently been going on, this is something that is devastating, something that has caused a lot of destruction, and we have seen that there has been delayed response regarding this as well. But if currently we look at the situation and we want to be able to deal with the way that this crisis is unfolding, do you think that we have the capacity at the moment, and do we have an understanding at the moment of how much the damage is, what the scale of the damage is, and how we need to respond to it?
I think generally if we see this is not something which has happened only during this year. We have seen in 2010 and then even afterwards there were many disasters. The impact has been a lot over a period of time, but if we see the same disaster like what happened in 2010 and now, we have not done much other than I think that early warning systems has improved a lot to the extent that mortalities have reduced to significantly. Whereas previously we used to get people in thousands who would die or get injured, but then I think this was the evacuation plans were executed very professionally, and people's life were saved to a greater extent. But I think we still need to have the capacity to do much more, developing especially the infrastructure which is required in order to protect the disaster that we have faced tremendously throughout Pakistan. You name it. I mean, like whether it's GB, whether it's Punjab, KP, everywhere the same situation. Actually, the infrastructure has not been built to that extent which can protect the pressure of water to some extent.
Right. Dr. Saab, you were talking about the positive side, especially regarding rescue and relief, that it was done in a very professional manner. But you then actually refer to the numbers so far. How sure are you that this is the final number? Because at this moment what we see is an unfolding crisis. The number sadly could have or would have gone up within days. Is that not true?
Well, I think the local authorities and the management, district managements are actually following to a greater extent, and they are quite well informed in a sense that wherever any disaster or any incidents happens, they do go and visit those areas. Yes, I think that it is not final yet. We are still getting water coming through different like areas. There is a report today. There was actually precautionary measures was taken to protect Charsada and Nushaira area.
Even in Sawat, they evacuated many buildings.
Right.
But then we also saw the video coming from Kohistan, where 5 people were stranded in a patch of earth, and then they were swept away.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the situation, I mean, like I would say that there is a lot of information which is still lacking, but still I feel that some good work has done, and lives have been protected.
Right. Mr. Ali, when we talk about, of course, the Prime Minister's visit as well, and the kind of briefing that he was given with regards to the damages that have occurred, he's also, of course, seen the aerial view as well. There, of course, is perhaps an increased mobilization of efforts towards what needs to happen, and of course our victims that are currently facing such catastrophe. When we take a look at the particular visit of the Prime Minister, and then of course the way that these institutions and at the local level and at the federal level have been mobilized, do you see an increased efforts coming in from the political leadership of Pakistan towards these floods now?
Recent flood has created havoc in the whole, especially the country, and especially in Sindh, where more than 300 people died, and nearly more than 800 people are injured, as the official figures, which was released by the Climate Change Ministry. And I told that this is the effect of the climate change. That's why the floods which are increased, and the density of the flood is so much high. That's why the people of the suffering, especially in Sindh, many lakhs people are dislocated due to the rain, and many thousand homes they are destroyed, and of course the many lakhs acres of the crops are completely submerged in the water. So it's a great news for the people of Pakistan that the Prime Minister has postponed his visit to the UK, and directly he came and visited Sakkar. Initially, he looked the whole area. Aerial view has got the disaster of the Khairpur and Sakkar and other areas. And afterward, the Prime Minister reached
Mr. Ali, I'll come back to you. Let me also welcome in the show Mr. Mohammad Yunus Mengal, who's in charge BOC PTMA Balochistan, who's joined us on telephone line. Mr. Yunus, can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. So, Mr. Yunus, of course, there is a lot of efforts that are underway in terms of rescue and relief, and we understand that the scale of what is going on within Balochistan and Sindh and other areas of Pakistan is quite unprecedented. But when we take a look at the way that the rescue and relief operations are underway, can you give us an update or an understanding of the kind of measures that are being taken at the moment, the kind of challenges that these authorities are facing, and what exactly is the level of coordination between the PDMA and the NDMA?
Yes, in Balochistan, pre-monsoon rains started in June, and after that in July. We are facing a lot of issues. Communication roads has been blocked due to flood, and bridge collapsed. We are continued our relief operation and rescue operation is going in affected areas. Today, our rescue teams engaged in Nasirabad district and Jafrabad, Jalmaksi, and also in urban flooding today occurred in Quetta city. Our teams rescued many people evacuated from vulnerable areas and shifted them to safer places. And we provided cooked food to our affected population, and they are now safe. Today, 2 casualties reported in Quetta, which flowed in flood water, and rescue teams recovered their dead bodies from flood water.
Right. Mr. Yunus, you of course earlier mentioned that we had these rains starting in from June and then also of course increasing in July, and we are where we are at this moment in August. Surely that the PDMA also takes a look at the way that the monsoon cycles develop, the way the potential rains are going to occur, and the kind of suffering or devastation that potentially can happen due to this. Was there any sort of assessment made prior to this suffering and these floods as to what can actually happen and any measures of preparation taken?
And Mingal Saab, while you're at it, could you also speak to the needs of the province regarding rescue and relief at this moment? What kind of help the provincial government might be needing right now, like medicine, food, and other infrastructure?
Yes, we established health medical teams, moved to affected districts and established medical camps and veterinary camps for animals. And in this emergent situation, persons also suffered, and loss of animal livestock also reported from affected districts. We already prepared monsoon contingency plan and conveyed to all deputy commissioners for preparedness, and checked machinery, available machinery, which are deployed in different districts. We issued alerts to concerned deputy commissioners for evacuation purpose and vulnerable areas where people are living. We ordered concerned deputy commissioners to early evacuate persons who are living on vulnerable sites.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Mingal, one more question. When we take a look at the efforts, of course, we've been hearing that some areas are difficult to reach and there's a lot of challenges that the relief efforts are facing. Could you also identify which particular areas the PDMA or other authorities have not been able to access so far?
And could you also answer the question that I asked earlier regarding the requirements that might be there? Because it seems that the provincial government is also struggling to actually cater to the needs of the displaced.
Yes, we are facing a lot of issues regarding road communications, bridges collapsed, and in our one district, Kachi, Bolan, yesterday one railway bridge collapsed and highway also blocked. Flood affected that bridge, highway. So we are facing communication issues, but we are trying to reach affected persons and provide them relief, or if they required rescue help. So our teams are deployed in different vulnerable areas
Right.
which it flood, like Nasirabad, Jafrabad, and Sobatpur. They are plain areas and people living on vulnerable areas. So our boat services are providing rescue help to that affected populations.
Right, all right. Mr. Yunus Menga, please stay with us in the debate. When we move on, of course, to talk about the issues that people are facing, of course, these floods, they've been spoken about as being unprecedented, and the scale of damage is something that we're still trying to measure. Let me also welcome in the debate Mr. Ahmed Kamal, who's Chairman, Federal Flood Commission. Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed, for joining us. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much.
Right, Mr. Ahmed, of course, this is something that has been spoken about as being unprecedented. But again, when we talk about floods, that in itself hasn't been something that hasn't happened in the past. And Pakistan, of course, every year has been facing such a crisis. Of course, the scale of the damage that we see now seems to be far more. Of course, the percentage of rainfall that is being quoted is much more than we have seen in the past. When we talk about the scale of these floods and the way that we are hearing they will increase or have the potential to increase, do you think that our authorities at the moment are prepared to deal with this crisis?
And could you also tell us the difference in the scale this time, and also whether it is going to continue for long now, or it is going to end soon, this potential flooding that is going on right now?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let me share with you that the potential with regard to whether it is going to go long or otherwise. The difference between 2010 floods and 2022 flood is that happened at a stretch. The present one was a sort of an unfolding, starting with Balochistan and Karachi, and then moving up to the southern Punjab portion, and then finally in the KP area. Let me tell you that during this situation, the federal government authorities with regard to regulation of water from our dams and from our barrages, they are fully in joint consultation process, and that's why at present we have managed some sort of a space in the Chashma reservoir to absorb whatever high flows that have been predicted to come from next 6 to 10 hours from Kabul river. Similarly, in view of the fact that some rain have generated high flows upstream of the Tribela, the regulation of Tribela is also being taken care of. All that is being done in order to ensure that no flood of high category is passed again from Tonsa and downstream, so that it should not further affect Guddu, Sakkar and Kotri areas. So that sort of a coordination at the federal government level is on, and on this very account, the provincial irrigation departments and their field formations, we are also in contact with them, and we are trying our level best so that whatever situation that may arise, we can avoid any unbecoming catastrophe, God forbid, if that is going to come again. Finally, I think that the situation that has unfolded has, brought out very visibly that now Pakistan is in the grip of extreme climate sort of a change. The areas where we used to have very minimum rainfall, those areas have got unprecedented or more than unprecedented high rainfall. And for that very reason...
Right, absolutely. Mr. Ahmed Kamal, could you also help us understand whether or not there can be any predictive analytical models made, or are they in place in terms of understanding the potential floods that can occur, considering what has occurred historically and what the forecasts have been like? Is there any way that we can be prepared in time for floods such as these?
Pakistan Met Department has got some models based on which they are predicting and they are doing their forecasting activities. or for the future purposes, we would be needing more different scenarios, both by virtue of models as well as by virtue of maybe bringing in more standard or different standard operating procedure, more than one, for regulating our dams and regulating our barrages. So that if a situation A exists upstream of a certain dam, then the regulation should be like that. And if a situation B is there upstream, the regulation should be like that. So by virtue of that, now we are having only single SOPs or like that for our dams or our barrages. These are required to be, re-looked into based on what we have experienced in 2010 and what we are experiencing now. And otherwise, this situation can come again and again.
Right. Mr. Mingad, I want to understand, when we take a look at the fact that perhaps we have some sort of understanding of the occurrence of these floods and the understanding that there is, of course, the potential damage that can exist, and then considering the fact that this is something that's been going on for 2 months, it did not start today, did we have anything in place in terms of an emergency response, an emergency SOP, the way we could have reacted or responded quickly? Also in terms of evacuation, I can understand that perhaps a lot of it may have been without any control of how we could have perhaps created infrastructure quickly or immediately in order to save ourselves from this crisis. But in the reports or in the knowledge of this, something like this occurring, did we have anything in place, a strategy, a response, an emergency plan to execute in case of such disasters?
Yes, we are coordinating with all land departments like CNW, Irrigation Department, and on federal level we are coordinating with the NDMA. We prepared our contingency plans before coming of monsoon spells. So we coordinated all with all departments, and our efforts are going on still. Irrigation Department provided us dam levels, and the catchment areas are the dams filled and water overflow due to large intensity of monsoon rains. Many of dams overflowed in province and caused damages nearest population and infrastructure.
All right. Dr. Ijaz, when we take a look at the situation, there's, of course, what needs to be done urgently now in terms of what we're doing. But this is something that we are doing in reaction to what has already happened and the damage that has already been caused. Of course, when we talk about issues such as climate change, that may seem out of our control, and that may be at the cause of what all has happened. But of course, this is something that we have an understanding of. This is something that we have faced with in the past as well. And if we are to face this in the future as well, then shouldn't there be a mechanism or a strategy or a way designed in order to help our people and minimize our suffering? Even now, perhaps, that when we look at the situation that is as it is, there could have been measures in place, perhaps, that would have minimized the destruction. Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree totally. Although there are many instruments available, if I remember correctly, there is a flood management plan which was, I think, in draft form a few years ago, but I am sure that it has been approved, which actually identifies various measures which are required, both infrastructure as well as the nature-based solutions. Similarly, when we talk about climate change, the climate change policy is there, the implementation framework is available, it has been approved. But unfortunately, I mean, like we are actually maybe we have more than what we require as far as documentation is concerned. But when it comes to the implementation and like on the ground situation, then we always fail, unfortunately. Though this disaster was quite huge, and I think it would not have been possible even if we do all the efforts. But still, I think the damages that has caused could have been minimized significantly. So I think we need to look into the capacity of the various institutions that we have, whether it's NDMA, PDMA or irrigation departments or other relevant departments, even the district management, whether they have sufficient infrastructure, whether they have sufficient tools which are required and equipment which is necessary in order to tackle this kind of situation.
Right, and of course these are all the institutions that come into mind when we talk about such a crisis. But Farrukh, of course there are other institutions in play as well, and of course media is one of them, something that you've commented on earlier as well. And it seems that there has been a lot of emphasis on the flood situation today and perhaps yesterday, and we haven't really seen that kind of focus in the past. Do you think that there are other institutions as well, including the media and other authorities or people in general, other bodies that still haven't really been mobilized or aren't doing as much as they can to help the people?
Right. Sana, that is a very important question. Regarding media, let me remind you how old this crisis is. Remember the Las Bela, helicopter crash? That was weeks ago. That was the time when it had already started in Balochistan. And since then, the media has been chasing, wild geese rather than actually focusing on these matters on the ground. But there is also a systemic capacity issue. When you have honed your entire media output according to ratings, especially in the urban centers, what happens is that you actually don't know what to do. There are three categories usually the three stages that take place. The first stage is denial. Media keeps on pretending that Shehbaz Gill is more important than hundreds and thousands of people who are sunk. Then the second one is then you start suddenly showing all the devastation without any commentary, and then coupled with that there is this outrage that keeps on building, and media somehow becomes an anxiety pump. The third stage is even worse, when the media decides to send its star anchors to the affected areas where they go, and they actually are the people who are actually yay high in water.
Absolutely,
how do you
right.
feel? Are you getting food? Are you comfortable? And all that kind of stuff. So that is one aspect. The second aspect is the systemic capacity of other institutions. For example, army has been mobilized, we know it. Today the federal government has deployed army in all the provinces as well to take care of the flood victims. But the question at this moment is, army is always there, and other institutions are also there as well, which actually go out of the beyond the call of duty. But all these institutions within the civilian domains that we actually put together, they are supposed to actually work proactively. Why is it that so many people are displaced, and then we all of a sudden realize that so much has to be done? I understand that the Prime Minister has gone to Sakha. We have seen Bilawal Bhutto Zardari also connecting with a common man. Even Imran Khan, who was actually going for Jalsas, finally has decided that he is going to go and meet the flood victims. But the question is, why is it that everything has to be a lead based and driven from the top, and even then you have to wake everybody up from time to time to actually get the kind of results? So these are very big questions, but I don't think at this moment anybody will be in a position to answer them, and therefore it will be wasted right now. Let us hope in coming days, particularly regarding media's contribution. I would have hoped that by this time, because there is a fund that has been established, we know devastation is huge. By this time, I would have actually expected two things. One, media telethons.
Yeah.
The second one, a number figure from NDMA. How much money does the government of Pakistan need for rescue, relief and reconstruction? Both have not started yet.
Absolutely, and these are of course important matters. Mr. Ali Asghar, I want to talk to you once more about the media issue as well. Of course, you're a journalist as well, and you understand the kind of consideration and sensitivity that is required in talking about and documenting what has been going on, and the way that you've seen this crisis being reported and being talked about. How would you see the contribution that media has to play so far, and what potentially can and should it do at this moment?
Yeah, of course, you rightly pointed out it that media has completely ignored this havoc and false situation in the whole of the country, and they are just highlighting other things, political things, and mostly because the media is just targeting to the urban viewers that what they want. But it's the responsibility of the media that they should highlight the this kind of the flood, the miseries of the people. They should show the to the people, to the world as well. But the media is not giving such a coverage to the flood victims and their miseries and problems. What can be done? It's not properly highlighted, and of course, the media should come ahead and. Not all the channels are included, but some channels are giving good coverage as well. So I tell you that these kind of the miseries which have come again, I'm covering the floods from 2010, 2011, and 2020. There was a flood incident. The reason behind this that when we have seen that in Karachi when there was a nalas not properly cleaned, every year there was a flooding situation in Karachi, but the nalas are clean this year. You have seen that the flood was calm, rainwater came, but it was gone to the sea properly. Similarly,
Right.
in the whole of the Sindh, the waterways, which are the natural ways, which are completely occupied by different influential peoples, they have raised their own defense walls surrounding to the lands. And now,
Arbab
of
sir,
course, in the river,
Arbab sir,
yes,
sorry to cut you. I totally agree with you when you talk about the way coverage was going on. But there are two questions that actually immediately come to my mind. The first one is regarding social media. The footages that we have been seeing on television throughout the day are mostly pulled from the social media that is usually criticized a lot. But we saw that the common man had the capacity to actually communicate with the people that this is going on. Otherwise, perhaps media didn't have the kind of coverage capacity. It has been the second part, sir. It has been 12 years since 2010 floods. Since then, we keep on holding everybody else accountable. But who is going to hold media accountable? Why is it that we don't have the capacity on ground to cover all these disasters when it comes to it?
yeah, of course, you rightly pointed out because the media should play a vital role. You have seen in 2005 there was an earthquake in Pakistan, and there was a lot of the casualties and disaster situation. Media plays vital role, and at that time, and you have seen the people are flooded from different area with the relief corps, and they reached, they work out, and the whole world come ahead. But this time, the media is not playing the due role because the social media is there, but social media is not so much confirmed media that the world can see, or we can just or confirm everything, whether the video is correct or not. But the social media is playing its vital role because the digital media is it's a time of the
All right.
digital media.
Let me also go
So
to Mr.
at the
Ahmed Kamal. Absolutely. Let me also go to Mr. Ahmed Kamal and try to get an understanding of the requirements that people have at this moment. Mr. Ahmed Kamal, of course, you have access to information that can help us understand what really needs to be done at this moment. And then also, when we keep hearing reports of forecasts of more rains and more floods in the future, what needs to be done now so that when we have that situation in the coming weeks or months, we are better prepared?
Can you, once again, let me request that you give us some idea about the timeline as well, how long this crisis is going to last?
Let me share with you that with regard to the relief activities, the most important is to provide shelter. Number two, food items so that they can keep their living on, fresh water or drinking water. These are the two, three things which the people require to start with. With regard to how well we consider the timeline to be, I think that the scale of emergency is so big, the sooner we get into it, the better it will be. And for that, it should be and it must be a joint effort, both from all spheres of life. When we say spheres of life, it means the governments of the four provinces, the federal government part.
Right,
as
Mr.
well
Ahmed
as
Kamal, I understand the point of sooner the better, but I want to understand what needs to be done soon so that when we talk about the future or the potential floods and devastation that we keep hearing about because of more rains can be helped. Is there anything that can be done at the moment?
I have two answers for that. If there is any rain activity over the river catchments, we are required to manage or regulate our reservoirs, dams and barrages to certain efficiency so that no flood situation is created downstream. With regard to flooding elsewhere or rain elsewhere, that is in urban areas, I think that how well the drainage system is taken care of, how well the already standing water is dewatered and things like that, it is going to keep the miseries, on the lesser side, otherwise they are going to mount.
All right. Mr. Mengal, when we talk about the efforts that are of course underway, there is the rescue and relief efforts, there is mobilization of funds from the government side as well, and there is also requests made to the international partners as well and to the international community in terms of helping the people of Pakistan. And also at the domestic front, there have been efforts to mobilize resources and collect funds for relief. When we take a look at the situation, can you help us understand exactly how much is it that we need to be able to mobilize domestically and internationally? And then also when we talk about the way that these efforts are underway, do you think that from your side you can tell us how it needs to be done better, how there can be more efficiency in this, and what sort of coordination do you require from the general public and our institutions as well, so that we can quickly and more easily help these people?
Yes, Government of Balochistan through PDMA covering the gaps of needy people and try to soon rehabilitate the affected population. So it's time all public comes and help needy people which are affected by floods. So it's time that all public do their side help to the affected peoples.
Right, absolutely.
With your permission, let me put a question to Dr. Ijaz. Dr. Saab, since we are talking about the lessons of the past experiences as well, one episode actually came to my mind. I'm talking about 2005, when there was an earthquake, and I was with an NGO. We tried to install emergency radio stations so that people can be informed about food supply and all the rationing. And unfortunately, the radio sets could not come in at that time because of our custom, challenges. But right now, it has been quite some time that we have been going through one crisis after another. Why is it that we don't have an audit of what we need usually? For example, right from helicopters and advanced communication systems to simple things like tents, mosquito nets, and portable toilets. Especially women are involved, and the word has it that many women are not drinking water just because of fear of not being able to relieve themselves because there is no privacy, right? Women have a different code in this country. So why is it that we don't have that kind of meticulous audit of all these needs?
Yeah, I think it's very unfortunate. Though when we talk about the earthquake of 2005, it was to some extent localized in a way that it was only related to maybe Azad Kashmir and KP. Yeah. Whereas this disaster is humongous in a sense that starting from northern part of Pakistan, from Gilgit-Baltistan up to the Balochistan, coastal areas, they are all suffering. And I remember that at the time of 2005, people were traveling from Karachi to Muzaffarabad to provide support to the people of AJK. Yeah. Whereas at the moment, now there are announcements, there are requests being made on social media by various groups that please help us, please help us. So the situation, I think everywhere people are busy doing, like some little whatever they can do.
Their bit.
Yeah. But unfortunately, as you mentioned, that the planning process, the need, the actions that are required are still missing. Action in a sense at the government level, as you mentioned, that the custom did not realize the importance of that particular equipment, which is, like only to connect people.
Yeah.
So this is an unfortunate actually situation where the required input which was expected from some of the institutions is not being provided.
And if there is any dilly-dallying or things actually don't actually unfold the way they are supposed to, should there be sackings? Should heads roll?
Dr. Ijaz?
Sorry,
yes, it's for you.
I'm talking about these departments which are responsible for doing taking care of these problems, and if they were found wanting, should their heads take responsibility and step aside?
Of course, like this, like some of the institutions are there only to cater to manage the situation, disaster situation only. So if they are not doing their job properly, or if they are laid back, so ultimately they should be responsible for not taking action and not supporting the public.
Right. I'll take the last question from you, Farrukh, and just building up on what you just talked about. When we talk about accountability and responsibility, do you think that in the past there has been any sort of analysis done post such a crisis or catastrophe as to who's responsible? And then we talk about sacking or removing people from their offices. Has that helped in terms of the way that we need perhaps more structural changes or more fundamental reforms taking place in those institutions? Or do you think that they have just contributed to some sort of appeasement for the people or the victims, that there has been some action taken, and has it amounted to much?
I'm very clear about this.
Okay.
If somebody is, found wanting, they lack the fear of God and they lack the fear of law. So you have to do something to put the fear in their hearts, right? This is basic thing. Human beings are dying. We are not talking about any departmental heads or bureaucracy or any paper pushing. We are talking about our own citizens who are daily dying, right? This is a serious catastrophe. Second aspect is what actually bothers me is not only the fact that these office bearers might be actually not doing their bit, but even our research or academic circles perhaps are not focusing on these matters.
That's true.
Come to think of it, I've been editing research journals in the past, and I don't remember any serious paper being written on any of these disasters and how they were managed and how we were lacking in certain things and what should have been acquired. So there is a journal or broader issue or deficit of imagination as well. And we have to take care of that as well. Remember, at this time we are merely talking about human lives and people who are living without shelter. But because of the devastation that has been wreaked at this moment, particularly in agriculture, 50%, actually 80 to 90% of our cotton is gone.
Yeah.
Date produce 90% gone. Vegetables 90% gone. Rice 50% sunk. Right? With that kind of a situation, you are going to have another disaster within weeks, and that is a food security.
Absolutely.
So all these things, and we are still thinking that whether sacking a person is a populist move or it is not. I think it is a very serious demand and need of the hour.
All right. Let me also once again thank all our guests, Mr. Ahmed Kamal, Mr. Ali Asghar Abab, Mr. U.S. Mikal, and of course Dr. Ijaz Ahmed for joining us in the studios as well, and of course Mr. Farrukh Pitafi always being with me in this show. When we talk about, of course, the people that are suffering at this moment, our hearts of course go out to them, and we stand in solidarity with them, and we of course also extend our condolences to the bereaved families, but there's much, much more that is required from us, and we need to be able to help these people since they are part of the country. And as mentioned earlier, this is not just a crisis that we are not facing in our homes just because we are not flood affectees. We are in fact affectees of this crisis, well, and it's better that we understand it so that we can actually help the people who are currently suffering. We hope that the suffering does not continue and that we can do something to help these people. That's all that we have from the debate. We'll join you next week. Take care.